All right. Happy Saturday, everyone. Super excited to see all of you here on a weekend as we gear up for a crazy next 1.5 hour. We have a very, very special guest with us today. And just to kick things off, this is the product marketing folks. And if you're looking at my face for probably the first time, I'm Smarth from Team TPF. Super happy to be here. And yeah, just a vibe check. Uh, how does everyone feel here? Just drop it in the chat. Keep putting in your thoughts and ideas in the chat so that it's a conversation, not a monologue. I think Madhav absolutely loves that, and trust me, me too. So just keep putting in your thoughts. Keep up the witty stuff coming in the chat, and we love to like talk through. If you have any questions, keep putting it in the Q&A tab, which is on just on the right to the chat box that you see. Uh, and yeah, thanks for the welcome there. Just sharing a few thoughts on TPF's brand new focus on the product marketing function. Really, right? It's something that is relatively new for us. We've done a lot of product management stuff, a lot of projects, a lot of help to people. You'll now see us taking strides to talk more and more about the product marketing function in the coming months, right? Uh, PMM, in my humble opinion, is where probably PM was back in 2018. We've seen a huge rise in the number of people who want to explore this area, crack roles with exciting startups, or probably just grow as thought leaders, right? And I'm sure a lot of you already are functional PMMs in the audience tonight. Um, but we just feel that there are quite a limited communities out there who which are probably as dedicated and focused towards helping people in towards this specific function as we'd like to see. And over the last 3 years, we've grown exponentially. We've got a lot of love in the product space. It's time to like rock the product marketing space as well for us. uh, it's also like worth pointing out that PMM can be a bit complicated for some folks. Ask 10 people to like sum up how what is a product marketing, who is a product marketer, and probably you'll get 12 different answers. That is precisely why we're like taking matters in our own hands and trying to reveal and illuminating the path for everyone. And the question that we ask then ourselves is like, if not us, then who, right? So yeah, let's come together to celebrate the legends who are driving the current wave in product marketing. And of course, talking about legends, we have Madhav here with us. He's held several titles at a lot of several SaaS companies: head of marketing, advisor, growth hacker, founding team member, first marketer, whatnot, right? But the bottom line is that Madhav is an experienced technology marketer and probably is the perfect person for us to listen to when it comes to breaking into PMM, as well as growing growing in your functional PMM journey. Uh, Madhav, super excited to have you. Let's get this started. I'll probably like quick question for you, and I think that might just give you an opportunity to like narrate your story for everyone. What got you into product marketing? What's your story here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, lovely question. And I've got a very unlovely answer on that. So, I mean, in general, uh, I love exaggerating things. And that's exactly what you do in product marketing. You exaggerate stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it was just, I mean, like I always notice myself, like, if I go to a restaurant and I'd be like, I had a good experience, I'd tell my friends about it and like, like 2x it, like, explain like, oh my God, it's like a Michelin star restaurant and everything. And interestingly, yeah, I mean, that was just like a natural kind of curve towards like, what, product marketing is a fit for me.
Wow, that's a brutal truth about yourself there. Love exaggerating things. Now I see how it's a superpower. But yeah, excited to have you. Madam, over to you. I'll just stop my screen sharing now so that you can take over. And we'll dive right in without any further delay. So yeah,
Okay,
stop
perfect.
my screen
Yeah.
sharing. You can try doing that.
Yep. Just give me 1 second.
Folks,
Um,
feedback on the audio, video, or anything on the pace of the session, or any questions that you have, just keep putting it in the chat. If you have questions, of course, then put it in the Q&A. But yeah, um, here we go.
okay, wonderful. Yeah, can everyone see my slides? And my face and my audio, is that all clear right now? Good. Let me just have a look at. Okay, perfect. Lots of yeses. So first of all, I'm actually like, wow, it's amazing. Like all of you kind of decided to kind of spend your Saturday evening. So I'm like super grateful that you kind of came forward for this session, and I'll try to make it as valuable and as fun for you guys as possible today. Right. Um, so just a little bit about me. Like Samarth was like super generous and like uh, you know explaining about my experience, but a little bit about my thing. So I've been a marketer, for almost about 10 years now. Worked across different functions, across different revenue stages, but kind of like and work with these amazing SaaS technology companies. Some you might have heard of. Hubstaff, which is at about 20 million in annual recurring revenue, Close, which is at about 25, 30 million, Bonsai, which is relatively smaller. And yeah, I was essentially like the first marketing hire, the first product marketing hire at places, and really just kind of started things from scratch there, built out the teams there. And basically, helped a lot of companies basically go from the 100K ARR milestone to 10 million. And interestingly, like this is basically a snapshot of my LinkedIn profile, as you can see, and this picture here is basically from one of the awesome retreats that we had at Close at in Lisbon, and like we had a wonderful time. But yeah, and I think the most interesting bit is that this is not my first time kind of explaining product marketing, because I've been a digital creator for almost about 7-8 years. I've been blogging for a very very long time. I've got my own podcast. But I think the more interesting bit is that I don't have any formal marketing degree, so I've just been yeah. I mean, I just happened to kind of enter into marketing and just kind of learned my way through. And I'm actually curious from everybody in the community, like, are there any other people apart from me who actually don't have any formal marketing degree? Just kind of drop in a yes or a no, or curious to hear. Um, okay, lots of um, people who are product managers. Right, right. Um, let's talk about today's outcomes. Right. I'm going to explain what is product marketing, how to get your product marketing role, your first product marketing role, or like more roles into leadership product marketing manager roles, and just some learnings from my own journey. That's essentially my promise from you from today's session, right? Today's session is particularly good for two kinds of people. One is marketing newbies who are just kind of looking to grow their skills in marketing. Let's say are feeling like they've kind of stagnated in their careers. This could be a great session for you. And then, of course, for experienced marketers just looking to progress in their careers. If you're a content marketer, you want to move into product marketing or something like that, I think this would be a very, very useful, session for you. All right, let's dive into product marketing, right? And like Samad said, you ask 12 different product marketers what product marketing is, and there's going to be 12 different definitions, right? And I'm actually curious to hear, what is product marketing to you? Can you drop in um, your answers in the comments? I'll wait for another 10 seconds. Yeah, I like that shift too.
Folks keep putting in your responses what's product marketing. I have absolutely no idea.
To be fair, I don't have the. I mean, nobody has the answer. Everybody's just kind of giving that, and this GIF is exactly what every product marketing leader would kind of give that way. The processes of growing top of the funnel through awareness. I think yes, it's more for B2B product marketing awareness. Yeah, so a lot of awareness. Letting people know what your product is, 100% true. Sitting at the intersection of marketing, sales, and product coordination. Yeah, I mean, amazing. I think you guys have an idea. So let me just kind of expand a little bit about at least how I like what my definition of product marketing is, and like how I kind of look at it in a broader way, right? It's essentially answering three questions: who you are, what you sell, and how you sell, right? Who you are is essentially like what's your story? How are you kind of, what pushed you to build the product? What's your differentiation in the market, right? What you sell is exactly the product. What kind of features do you have? What is the kind of value you're creating, and how you sell is really, once you've defined all of these, like how you selling these, be it through different channels and everything. And essentially, when I kind of look at product marketing, there's mainly two things that you basically do. The first thing is you bring a product to market. And this could be bringing a brand new product to market, when it's, let's say, a company it's starting on day zero, or it could be bringing a product to market, for a company that has, like a suite of products. And then, it could also be, if you're launching or bringing a new feature to market, right? There are lots of different things. And within that, there's a lot of nuances to it. You might have heard of terms like messaging, positioning, story, and I'll explain to you all of that. But essentially, it's when you think about bringing a product to market, it's thinking about, where do you fit in the market? How do you kind of enter the market and like make a splash? Right, like for example, like Slack came into the market and everybody knew about them, right? So how do you ensure that you come into the market so everybody hears about you, everybody knows that they want to try you out because you're doing something different than what the others are doing, right? It's also kind of showing your position in the market, right? Like, are you a certain targeting a certain category? Are you trying to fill a certain gap? And it's also kind of coming up with like a story of like why, what compelled you to build that feature, because in today's world, a lot of users really care about like where this, like, if this is somebody who's built the product out of like a real pain, like that product is something that a lot of similar folks would try, right? And then eventually it's about launching the product to market, right? It's about launching it, let's say, on Product Hunt, or like building a wait list, or like basically doing as much as you can to kind of create an explosion in the market to basically launch. That's the first aspect, right? And the second aspect is driving demand and usage of the product, right? So it's essentially things like generating demand on all fronts. There was a lot of answers that you gave, which is awareness. How do you get people to try out the product? Try out the free trial, the free sign up. How do you get to do that? How do you kind of repeatably acquire customers? How do you improve conversions? From people signing up for a free trial to eventually basically signing up and like becoming a paying customer. And it's also things like reducing churn. It's when a customer basically is not happy and they start leaving, what can you do to kind of reduce that churn, right? So it's a lot of different things, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do in the product marketing, but I like to kind of look at it, bucket them in these two specific buckets. Now, there's a lot of people that ask, what is the difference between product marketing and marketing? It's essentially the same thing, right? And I asked myself the same question, right? Like, like, why did the role product marketing come in when marketing already existed? Like, what is the difference, right? And so, just a little bit of background of like why this role basically came up. So, back in the earlier days, I'm talking like as early as like 5 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, um, things like defining the story of the product, communicating the value props of the product, defining what market category to enter, like all of these things were previously handled by product managers and CEOs. And there might be some people in the audience who might get offended, but product managers and CEOs aren't the best marketers. I think a lot of their skills are super good on the product side, right? Like building an amazing product, but like on the marketing side, like there's an interesting example that I talk with my product manager. They love to use the word like actionable insights, right? And that's essentially like a product manager would say it as actionable insights, while a marketer would probably coin it in a slightly more value prop way, because that's, nobody wants to hear that, oh, we give you actionable insights, we're going to change the world, right? And so I think this is what led companies, like they start feeling the need for a marketer to own this role, for a marketer to own how you basically communicate the value of the product, how the product can be differentiated in the market, how the story comes in. And this was something nobody was owning. And, product managers and CEOs also had a lot of other things to do, right? So that's how this whole role came up. And the interesting thing is that the whole product marketing, you know, universe, eventually evolved to a point where it's a fundamental requirement for marketers today. It's not like, oh, you can be a marketer all your life and not have to do product marketing any point in time. There will always be a time when you'll tackle topics in product marketing, and more companies are basically, kind of using the skills required in product marketing as an essential skill for a marketer, and that's why it's kind of becoming super big. Um, why is product marketing, like, why do so many people care about it, right? Like, why is it important? And so I've basically got, this basically, I took this from a Dave Kellogg slide, but this table that you see here, I'm not sure if it's super clear, but essentially what it says is that, this is basically the percentage of revenue that's spent on sales and marketing. And what's interesting to see is that, like for example, Salesforce spends about 40% of their revenue on sales and marketing, right? And if you look at the R&D, which is kind of more product development stuff, it's about 13%, right? So companies are spending 2 to 3 times more on sales and marketing than R&D. And the reason is just this, that product marketing improves the probability of success of the product, right? If you're not going to package the product in a nice way, the product is not going to sell. If you're not going to make people aware about this new feature, it's not going to increase the additional revenue that the company is looking for, right? And particularly in the early stage, for startups, it's almost key to going from 0 to 1. If you don't invest in product marketing, you will not be able to get from 0 to 100K or to a million. And you really can't think beyond that. And that's why product marketing is such a key role. It helps them go from 0 to 1. Who are the people that you end up working with as a product marketing manager, right? And I think there are essentially 5 people that you're always working with. I'm going to start with the first one, which is the product manager. And if there's one person you don't want to be enemy with, in the as a product marketer, don't let the product manager be that enemy. Like, he or she is going to be kind of like your best friend, the person who you're going to collaborate the most with. They're the people that enable you to be successful. They're the people that understand the product, inside out, and they'll be able to give you a lot more insight, right? So product managers are the ones, that you work very, very closely with, right? You work with the leadership teams because it's a very, very important critical role into making, like I was explaining, making a product successful, bringing a feature, to market, and like making that, successful, right? So, if you're in a smaller startup, you often report to the CEO. If it's a bigger team, then it's either like the VP of marketing or the chief revenue officer, the chief growth officer. But essentially, you do that, and then, for doing the work, you're essentially working, with marketers. You might work with content writers, will help you, let's say, create, articles to, basically, launch a feature. Let's say, you will work with, copywriters who will help you basically craft the landing page. But if you're like in a slightly more early stage startup, you might just be doing all of these things yourself. You'll be working with designers, help you create the website, create like an amazing website that will basically make the product shine. And you'll be working with customer success and support professionals to kind of, basically understand, who are like the users that are using the product quite a lot, to get testimonials, to be able to just understand, if there's a customer that has a lot of feedback to give, or if you just want to get on calls with customers. And so these are like just to kind of give you some point, like product marketing is probably one of the most cross-functional roles in marketing. You're essentially working with everybody, and there's a lot of context switching that happens in this role. um, who thrives in a product marketing role? And I think before I explain that, a quick disclaimer: I don't think that these are kind of like the absolute requirements or the skills. I've seen a lot of people who don't have any of these three and have thrived in a role, right? So take this, with a pinch of salt. Even if you don't have these, like, you can succeed in a product marketing role. But at least in my opinion, um, I mean, there are three key traits that I've seen for like successful product marketers. And the first is you enjoy working cross-functionally. And I was just explaining that in the earlier point. There's going to be a lot of context switching. You work, and you need to be able to, you'll be managing a lot of stakeholders. You'll be working with a lot of different people for a lot of different requirements to make something happen, and you should be able to enjoy that. I think the second thing is you love going deep into the product and the market you're selling in, and you're essentially you can spend hours just understanding the competitive landscape, looking at G2 reviews and trust radius and really just identifying like the keywords that are working and all of that. It's essentially like going super deep into the product. And I think the third thing, you've got to be super organized with your work, just because there's a million things that you have to do in product marketing to be able to like get to make things happen. And like you have to do a lot of context switching, and to be organized will really help you like do a lot of things super quickly. So let's take a quick example to just give you an understanding of like what what do you do in product marketing, and like the specific things about product marketing. And I'm going to take the example of you, right? And this may sound a little weird, but just hear me out, right? Think of yourself as, how would you market yourself to companies? Let's say you are somebody who's in the market, you're trying to get, let's say, a role, right? The first thing is, you think about, well, how do I compete against a million other marketers, right? How am I different that a company ends up hiring me, right, versus the others, right? And that's essentially positioning. You're basically positioning yourself to say that I'm the expert in this, and this, right? Like I'm the expert in a certain revenue stage for a specific channel, for a specific industry, all of that, right? And that's essentially what you're doing, even with products, right? You're trying to tell customers that how am I different than 100 other products in my category? What makes me different? How am I different that that you should try me out versus the category leader, right? Like if let's say you're coming into the CRM world, how are you different that somebody tries you and not Salesforce, right? And that's essentially positioning, and that's why it's super important, right? The second thing is when you kind of go to companies, right? You often see cover letters, right? But a little bit more broader definition is, what's your story in your job application? How to kind of get noticed, right? What is something that the employer would remember about you, right? And that's messaging, right? That's essentially what you're doing with the products as well. That what's my story, like what's the product story that a customer ends up remembering you, right? Like if it comes from you working at some place, having a real pain point and explaining that, and somebody empathizes with you, like that's a straight up messaging match, right? So and that's essentially how you kind of tackle messaging. The third thing is, how are you getting in front of other employers, right? And that's generating demand, right? Like let's say you apply on certain job boards, or let's say you're super active on LinkedIn, or let's say you blog, or you have a podcast, or all sorts of things, right? That you're basically generating demands that a lot of employers see your profile and basically start contacting you for the role. And that's essentially what you're doing on the product side, right? You're trying to get in front of as many customers as possible. You're trying to be in Google search and email and ads and all sorts of places, and you're generating demand for people to come check you out, right? The fourth thing, again, when you kind of think about yourself, right, when you're in the job search, how do you find the right roles you can improve the success percentage to get hired, right? Let's say if you're a fresher and you start applying for, I don't know, director of marketing roles at 1,000 people companies, right? You'll obviously start getting a lot of rejections, right? And so eventually you start kind of coming in like, oh, I probably need a junior role to be able to get there, right? And that's essentially that's conversion rate optimization. That's what you do as as product marketers for your customers, right? Like you're often in search of finding the right kind of profiles, and we try to label this as ICPs, or ideal customer profiles, right? You're basically looking for that so that you can improve, like you try to get more of your ICPs in your funnel, and try to, basically improve your conversion rates and eventually improve your revenue, right? And I think the last thing is, when you're kind of applying for your job, right? Obviously, a lot of times you have to think like, how are you helping the employer make more money by hiring you, right? Like, especially in marketing, right? Like, they're hiring you for, for you to be able to generate revenue for them, right? And that's essentially what you do in product marketing as well, right? You're essentially trying to explain to the customer that if you hire me, I'm going to help you make more money by, value prop one, two, three, whatever that is, right? And that's business, right? Like, that's essentially everybody that needs to do, right? And I think this is a wonderful way for you to kind of think about product marketing as such. Like, think of yourself and then think about the company and then try to kind of draw those parallels. Yeah, so let's talk about breaking into a product marketing role, right? And there's obviously a lot of roles in the market right now, but I've got some tips on like how to kind of be successful in a product marketing role, and basically break and like get these amazing roles, in global SaaS companies. So, over, a lot of years, I worked with a lot of, really good SaaS companies, right? And I started seeing a lot of questions coming in, like, how did you get this, job, or how did you get this company, right? And I answered a lot of people, and I started documenting those learnings. And like years and years later, there was a framework that was developed, and that's what you see here. It's the AMPS framework, which basically stands for aspiration, mindset, positioning, and share, right? And what I'm going to explain to you is the AMPS framework and how you can apply that to your journey, so that you can, basically attract more and more product marketing roles, right? And I think the simple thing to remember is that, um, at least when I kind of look at my experience, I never ever applied, or like in 90% of the cases, I never really applied for roles. Those roles found me, right? And that's essentially where you want to be. And that's essentially where I'm going to help you with the AMPS framework, right? So let's kind of dive into, specific things within each of these, right? Let's talk about aspiration, right? So, you know, like, to be honest, like, when you kind of think about like what's your dream role, right? um, Obviously kind of keep it realistic, right? Like, if you say, oh, my dream role, I want to be Elon Musk in like 10 years, right? That's not, I mean, that's not the right thing to kind of think about. Like, you want to be super specific about what's your dream role. And a great way to kind of visualize that and like to keep it very specific is, if you look around on LinkedIn and you find somebody, like, what, I want to be this person 5 years from now, right? That's the way, for you to kind of identify like, the aspiration bit, right? Like, find that LinkedIn profile that you feel is achievable, right? And you can basically aim yourself to kind of get to, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to work backwards from that, right? What you essentially want to look at, is that this is the dream role that I want to get to, right? There's a certain set of skill sets that I need to get to that role, right? And for example, let's take a head of product marketing, right? And let's say you're a product marketer right now. To be able to get to that head of product marketing role, there are perhaps a lot of things like, I don't know, management experience, let's say, experience of working with, like, let's say 20 million ARR companies, all of these different things, right? And so what you need to look at is right now, what are your skill sets, right? And how do they match with the existing or like the future skill sets of this role, right? And try to see if there are like 10 skill sets, how many of those you check out, right? Like, so let's say you're checking two, out of those 10. The good thing now is that that, these are the 8 skills that you need to get, to be able to get such a role, right? So you can find opportunities within your current workplace, and basically say, try to kind of take those kind of projects, right? Or you can basically look, at joining another company and find that. But when you kind of find that particular dream role, right, and you put a date to it, that 5 years from now, and you start backtracking towards it, it usually ends up happening anyway. Because and that's essentially, like, I've seen a lot of marketers, or professionals, who, when I ask them, that, what's your 5-year goal, and it's one of the most corny interview questions to ask, but it is helpful to know that what is your 1-year goal, 5-year goal, 3-year goal, right? Because it gives that commitment that I want to get to that certain place, right? So I think first is you should define who that what that dream role is, what skills are needed for that role, and where you are at right now, and like how that kind of uh, where's the gap that you need to fill to get to that candidate role fit. Okay, let's talk about the second thing, which is the mindset, right? And this one is a huge one. Okay, the one thing I mean, there's a couple of things within product marketing that you need to think about. The first is when you take up a product marketing role, right? You have to like really come in with like an ownership mindset, right? You're essentially asking the product manager and the CEO to give up a very critical aspect of the business to you, an aspect so critical that it'll basically, responsible to take the company from 0 to 1, right? And to be able to give them that confidence, they need to see that kind of ownership mindset. Like they don't need to manage you. You should be able to manage yourself. You should be able to, over communicate your work. You should be able to really just the best way to kind of think about it is that think of it like it's your own company, it's your own product. How would you market it? And that's essentially when you kind of start getting that ownership mindset. The second thing is within product marketing and even marketing roles in general, there's going to be a lot of failures, right? Nobody has a 10 on 10 success streak. Nobody even has a 5 out of 10 success streak. But the one thing I know is that um, people are just not willing to even have those failures. Like a simple thing is that at close, my C used to tell me that if you're not making like 5 mistakes a month, you're just not good enough, right? And the essential thing here is that in marketing, there's going to be a lot of fails, but those failures are basically ways for you to understand how to, basically figure out, how to make progress on those certain things. It's never going to be successes, and to be able to rise up from those failures to make progress is like super critical in this, and I think the third thing is you have to be you really have to take out time to think critically, right? um, you can spend a lot of time reading articles from all of these different people on communities. You can spend a lot of time reading books and everything, right? But just remember that anything that's written in those articles, it's already been tried and tested, right? What you should be thinking about is here's a complex business problem. How would I tackle it? Right, ask yourself, have that conversation, create a mind map, or just write down notes, like really take our time to brainstorm and think that. And that basically comes from asking questions, asking questions about why is this not happening. Look at the data, ask questions, talk to your customers, ask questions, just be inquisitive. Like inquisitiveness is going to take you really really far in product marketing, because once you're going to start thinking critically, once you have a super good understanding about your customer, your product, your problems, you're just unstoppable in product marketing. Let's talk about the third thing, which is positioning. And I know I've talked about this in the past, but I think this is super critical when you're kind of applying for a product marketing role. There's going to be a million product marketers, or let's say 100,000 product marketers you're going to compete with, right? You should figure out what makes you unique, right? And it's very easy to say, oh, whatever, I'm not unique enough, I don't have enough experience. But I can tell you this for a fact that everybody has their own unique standpoint, like point of view, right? Maybe you come from, I don't know, let's take, for example, let's say you come from a prop tech industry, right? And let's say you worked there a little bit, and you had some results within a certain revenue milestone, within a certain style, like basically bringing a prop tech product into market, right? That's your unique positioning. There's going to be, if there's going to be 100,000 product marketers, there's probably just going to be 500 product marketers with a prop tech experience, right? And when you apply for a prop tech job, you immediately stand out, right? And what I have here is basically just a little bit of an introduction from my LinkedIn profile. And the way I've basically positioned myself is that that I'm upset. Like my positioning is that I basically help early stage SaaS products within the revenue range from 100K to million, and basically grow them, right? And then I've basically got like certain experiences within early stage startups, helping them from a certain revenue to the other. And this kind of a positioning has really helped me get those kind of roles to me, right? Like people, when they see this, they contact me saying that, oh, you know what, we'd love to have a chat, right? And so like positioning yourself and finding that positioning can like take you really, really far in, when you're applying for product marketing roles. And the last thing, which is so critical, is that without ever having worked with you, right? How can employers, how can companies, how can people know about your work, right? And you should really think about this, because when you're, let's say, applying for product marketing roles, right? There's going to, like I said, let's say for a role, especially in remote roles, there's probably like 2,000, 3,000 applicants per role. And, like, if you're like the others, like basically the employer is going to look at your CV. They're going to basically, and like just like the other 500,000 people, right? But if, let's say, they've come across your work in the past, let's say they, I don't know, heard a podcast with you, right? Or let's say they read a book you've written, or they read an article you've written, or saw a LinkedIn post, right? You have an edge over all of the other people, right? They already know about it. They'll be like, you know what, I actually read something about product marketing from this guy. I'd love to have a conversation. And I'm telling you this from experience, even when I've hired marketers, right? Like if there's somebody that I know that I've come across, I feel like this person might be good because I've seen some of their work, right? Like, I mean, I will most likely talk with them first before the others, right? And so the way I've done this for myself is, I've, like I said, I've been blogging, I share all of my work. I have a podcast, I also ran a newsletter for a couple of years. But essentially, anything that I've learned, I've tried to communicate that. I'm also, for the last 1 year, become quite active on LinkedIn. But just these are just some ways. But I think you should totally share your work, right? No matter how much LinkedIn is filled with like lots of people sharing stuff and everything. But the fact is, for you, like when you share your work, there's somebody you don't know who's learning about your work, and you're kind of building an unfair advantage there. Um, so essentially, when I kind of just look back, there are three big lessons from my journey. Right, the first is doing the work is greater than reading the work in marketing. Right, and I want you to remember this very, very clearly. Right, you can spend hours. Like I've done, I wasted 2 years, reading through community posts and everything. And I think over time, I just realized that when people write articles, right, like first of all, it's always wins and it's always great things and everything. And the second is anything that worked for them, worked for them, for their industry, for their category, for their state of business, for their revenue milestone, right? And that might not necessarily be a perfect match to you, right? Something else might work for you, right? And if you try to replicate what they've done, it's not gonna. So it's a great way to kind of get some ideas initially, but you need to do the work to be able to get those learnings. Okay. I think the second big lesson is focus on good opportunities, not pay. Okay. So I've often seen, marketers going like, oh, you know what, this person's earning this much, this person's making 4x than me, right? And if you take up a job, just for the pay, right? Like just because you're getting 2x, right? That's a horrible way to kind of go ahead with this. In my opinion, and like in my experience, I started out my career when I joined HubSpot, it was a very low pay, right? But I'd done my research and like, these are the kind of things, these are the things in my checklist that will get me to that role. So let me just take that, right? And I'm so glad in hindsight I took that opportunity because compensation caught up. Once you have amazing experiences under your belt, people will be willing to pay you, right? But if you don't have those experiences, right, like that pay will never be able to catch up, right? You can get to that 2x and then that's it, you'll be flat, right? So instead of chasing after pay, at least in the initial phases, focus on getting good opportunities, focus on getting that things in your checklist, right? And the third big learning for me is that everyone is on their own journey. Okay. So never compare yourself with others. Never compare that, oh, this person within 2 years went from my kind of position to VP of marketing and look at me where am I and everything. The thing is that you don't have context about their, journey. You have no idea how they're doing right now, what got them there. You know, you have no context. The only context you have is about yourself, right? So you need to really just compare yourself with yourself, right? Like, you have full context about yourself and it's not going to help you. These are all distractions when you see, oh, this person's jumping the ladder, I'm falling behind, it's a rat race. just forget about that. Like just focus on doing the work, right? Focus on improving yourself, from a year ago, and you'll be all set. Okay. Um, yeah. So I think moving on, let's kind of talk about how to kind of get a leadership role in product marketing, right? And so I've got five big lessons from my journey. The first is titles don't matter. Okay. So, I mean, if you're kind of chasing after, oh, I need to get that director of product marketing title, right? It really doesn't matter if you're a director of product marketing. You could be a product marketer for WordPress and you'd be doing absolutely stellar work, as compared to a director of product marketing, let's say a 5 people company. And funnily enough, I'm not going to name it, but I actually worked in a company where there were 5 people in the marketing team and everybody was a director. So, there was a director of content marketing, there was a director of product marketing, there was a director of affiliate marketing, and there's no team underneath. There's all 5 directors working, right? And it really just doesn't matter. What you should be looking at is what's the kind of work that I'm getting in there, right? Like, am I really working on the things that are more leadership level? That's great. Okay. The second big lesson is, like I said, you have to take extreme ownership. Okay. And in leadership roles, it starts becoming more and more important, especially because when you're going for, let's say, a head of product marketing or a head of marketing role, right? You're basically asking the CEO to say, that, hey, I'm going to take care of marketing. You can chill and focus on the other things, right? And to get that kind of responsibility and that trust, right? There's a lot you need to kind of show in terms of taking ownership. So it's really just about, like I said earlier, it's about thinking of it as your own company and like treating it like that and like really working on it like that. Number three, you, which is kind of like a super big lesson when you kind of get in a leadership role, is that you need to start managing up, right? So a lot of people say, it's about managing downwards, managing a team. That part is easy. I think the more difficult bit is how do you manage your CEO? Because I mean, when you're kind of in a leadership role, the CEO expects you to be like very well organized. You can manage yourself, right? And they don't have the time to manage you, but you need to kind of go up to them, be like over communicate on like things that's happening, over communicate on your requirements, your blockers, if there's any help you need. You manage the CEO and you tell them that, listen, now that I'm here, I'm going to take care of this function and I'm going to ask whatever is needed from you, right? And that kind of a managing up skill is super valuable in leadership roles today. Like that's almost like 100% expectation, to be honest. Um, Lesson number four, like I said, is as you again start coming into leadership role, you need to be more and more inquisitive. You need to ask a lot of questions. You need to talk to people. Oftentimes we tend to make assumptions, right? And then we refuse to talk to customers, and we stop talking to people and everything. And I think the thing I've realized is that breakthrough ideas emerge from asking these questions, right? Like, for example, you might, let's say, get into 3 customer calls and you realize that, oh, I didn't really learn anything. But the fact is that when you kind of get like when you kind of look at it from bird's eye, when you talk to like 10, when you have like 10 customer interviews, what you realize is that in the first 7 customer interviews you didn't really learn anything. But then in the 7th interview someone will say something, and then you'll hear that again in the 10th interview, and now it starts becoming an insight that starts coming up, right? And that is an insight that nobody is tapped. Nobody, your competitors don't know about it. You have basically unlocked it by being inquisitive, and then you can maximize it full, right? So that insight could be a way to communicate the product, a way to market the product, a particular tactic, right? Or a product insight. Like, these are things that can only come from being inquisitive and asking questions. It's also kind of, when you even look at the data, when you start asking questions like, oh, why am I getting a lot of customers from UK? When I, let's say, see it from a year ago, I have 4 times more customers. Is that a potential big market? Then you start looking in deep and you're like, all right, there's an opportunity. Let's start investing a little further than that, right? And then you can have like outsized impact and results, right? And lesson number 5, again, as you can see, there's a lot of repetitiveness on this, because these are like the most important things. You need to have your own positioning, even when you're kind of in a leadership role, right? Like when I kind of started out in my journey, my positioning came out to be that I've worked, with remote teams for like almost like 9 years now. And I always was communicating that, I've built out remote marketing teams. That's my thing, right? And that's how I basically started getting more of those kind of roles. And the interesting thing is that positioning is not a like set and forget it kind of exercise. It's always evolving, right? So a funny story is that I always went with that remote marketing aspect of it until COVID hit, and every marketing team in the world became remote, and everybody knew how to like run a remote marketing team, right? So my positioning finished, right? Like everybody was a remote marketing lead, right? So, and then that's when I kind of start thinking and be like, what is my true positioning? What, like, out of like the last 7 years, like what makes me different? And then, I eventually came up with like the whole early stage, startups and like helping them go from 0 to 1. And so essentially my point being here is that you need to be very self-aware about like what your strong points are, what makes you unique, how does your experience make you whoever you are, right? And you need to keep relooking that every couple of years. I'd almost say every year your positioning changes, so just kind of think about that. And I'm just going to say that you won't have all the answers now, and that's completely okay. Especially if you're a beginner, you won't have all the answers. But I can tell you this, that when you kind of think about all of these things, when you start thinking about, how to take an ownership mindset and asking questions, you will get answers over time and you will get ahead of 99% of the peers. Because at least what I've seen is like 99% of the folks in our industry just don't even think about these things. Okay. I mean, and the top 1% are the ones that thought about those things, documented stuff, basically became very self-aware about who they are, and then eventually got those amazing ones. And just kind of like as a reference point, I've basically gone into depth into my entire AMPS framework in my course, which is on early stage marketer.com. I basically running kind of like a sale right now, where you can basically get it by using the coupon code TMF special to basically get like 87% off on that. And yeah, I mean, like that's essentially it. I'm basically going to help you build a career in marketing with this talk, hopefully, where you can start operating on a global stage, where you're high in demand, where you can choose job opportunities versus companies choosing you. That's it.
Crazy. This was so much fun, super insightful. Loved the flow, by the way, for the entire session. I hope everyone who's there in the audience had fun as well. These are like absolute gems that you dropped here, Madhav. I particularly like that AMPS framework. I think there's still some buzz in the chat about that. Been reading through a lot of comments there as well. So if you just probably look at the chat as well, you'll find a lot of interesting comments yourself. And I know that's something that you built out on your own, so it's something that is pretty unique to you. And towards the end as well, pretty valuable lessons that like go beyond just a particular function or the product marketing function, really, like, which is like titles. Yeah, they don't probably as matter as much in the longer run if you talk about career security in particular, or probably like taking ownership of things. These are things like that just go beyond a particular function. So really loved that bit. And also can't help but reiterate the fact where you mentioned that example of you as a and like walking through the entire flow, you pitching yourself to companies and going beyond, and companies and opportunities coming to you rather than just going out and applying like by the volumes. So yeah, I hope there's a lot of love flowing in the chat as well, Madhav, for you. So take any of that. So what we'll do now is like just double the fun by with a Q&A round. And if someone could like help me out with figuring out what questions we should be asking. I have collated a few that I thought would be the most useful, but please folks just keep upvoting and keep, still there's a lot of time to like put in the questions. We'll just spend say the next 10 minutes or so. In fact, a little time check here, Madhav. How good are we on the clock? It's almost 8, so we can like probably make it by in the next 10 minutes or so and wrap up the questions there. Does
Yeah,
that sound
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm happy to answer questions. I think there's this time for sure. Yeah,
awesome? So it's a Saturday night. A lot of people might be wanting to go out and party as well, Madhav, you
that's
included.
true. Not me, not me. I'm a very boring person.
Well, okay, perfect. So yeah, let's do that. But just before we open up the questions, I have one myself, right? And something that I've been thinking about pretty a lot recently is the fact that how does an ideal say collaboration between a product manager and a product marketing manager really look like day to day or probably like week to week? How does that typical collaboration look like ideally in a broad sense?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, the way at least right now, like I work, is like, so the product manager is essentially responsible for like the entire roadmap, how the product is being built, like how the progress is happening, and they're also kind of doing the research of like what the future is going to kind of look like, right? And the interesting thing is that they have a lot of insight about, first of all, where the market is heading, where the personas are heading, what's the progress of the product, what are kind of like the pain points when you're kind of building out the features, right? And so I often have these conversations, like I almost have like 1 or 2 weekly one-on-ones with my product manager to just chat about like, let's say, for example, a specific example is that, let's say we are creating persona pages for like our product, and we are targeting different kinds of personas, right? To essentially tackle like what are the pain points we want to tackle in those landing pages, right? What are kind of like the way how we communicate, what value prop is going to kind of click, right? That's something the product manager can get a lot of insight on just based on their conversations with prospective customers and everything, right? Oftentimes they can also kind of help in like basically the product manager and the marketing team essentially kind of take care of the entire growth, right? So they're essentially your champions if you want to kind of do some product led growth stuff in there, right? To be able to make changes in the product, to be able to, let's say, set up a referral program, right? They'll be the people to do that, right? Another example is that let's say you essentially want to kind of do a lot of marketing up stuff and like essentially understand how the users you acquired, how they're kind of performing inside the product, where they're coming from, and all of that. The product manager is somebody who you work with on those metrics, right? Like they're kind of like more of your technical hand and the insight into the product. I think they're the probably the only person in the entire engineering team that can essentially understand you and communicate to you the best out of everybody. And just as a product marketer, you're very very close to the product, right? And you're always trying to kind of like truly understand the competitive landscape, right? So they're helpful there. I think there's a lot, like another way that we were working is recently was that we were trying to identify like what's our positioning, like what market category do we fit in, and then they come in with their perspective that these are the competitors that are doing these things. Here's, I think, how we fit, and then you come in with your perspective. So yeah, there's lots of ways. I mean, like I said, the product manager is probably your BFF in the team.
Wow, that's an interesting statement to make. Perfect. Also, like, so Priyam has like mentioned in the Q&A, right? And it's like, I see it's probably one of the more upvoted questions here, and it says like, what typical say softwares or tools one should be well versed with before or before they enter the product marketing domain, or probably like, what are some of the tools that you typically use every day that are like super useful for you?
That's a wonderful question. I think that, I mean, that's so valuable because I think if you kind of come in with some experience on those tools, I think it just makes things so much easier. So I think the first is you need to have some experience with using a CMS, right? A content management system. So the two most popular ones right now that are used by a lot of companies are WordPress and Webflow, right? And Webflow is kind of becoming increasingly popular. And it's to your advantage, right? Because there's a lot of teams that also kind of have their own, coded website, and that just sucks to make edits on, right? Because it's not necessary you need kind of coding experience, but if you know how to kind of use these CMSs, you'd be able to kind of make changes on the website yourself and not need any help from developers and everything, right? I think that's number one. The second thing is, it is always helpful to have some experience understanding, how to kind of get insights from analytics tools. The two most popular ones are Mixpanel and Amplitude. These are kind of like the most popular things that are kind of used. And to be honest, like, um, even if you know one of these, I think you will be able to navigate the other one as well. Like the basic concepts remain the same. How to kind of craft together reports, how to craft together data, how to kind of dive in. I think that is a very, very useful skill set. I think the other thing is just really copywriting. Like how do you communicate the product in the best way possible, right? So you need to be really, really good at like writing and storytelling, because you're a lot of the work in product marketing is storytelling, right? And so you need to kind of really hone on those skills. I'd say like these are so like within storytelling, there's like, of course, there's a lot of frameworks that you can kind of obviously think about, but from a software perspective, I'm not 100% sure. But I'd say like when I kind of see myself, I just work in Webflow, I work in Amplitude, Google Analytics and all of these. And then, I find myself working in a lot of these collaboration tools like Slide and Notion, basically crafting together documents and everything. And then another tool that I use a lot is Whimsical, which is kind of like my way to prototype landing pages, right? Like, how to kind of do that. I think these are just like some tools that be helpful as a starting point.
Super. By the way, you mentioned about storytelling. I think it's an interesting thing, but is there any like tool or so that's out there that helps you like craft better stories or anything? I can't think of one myself really, so just putting that off. uh but yeah, I mean, any tools or software that like help you craft a better story out there?
Right. I mean, the only tool that I can think about right now is usertesting.com. And that's essentially, I,
That's my
I, yeah, I mean, I forgot to kind of mention that. We use that a lot, just so that, when you, especially like at least for us at our stage, we're kind of super early right now. We basically, test out different copies with people and then see how they're reacting to it, what kind of wording they're using, and then, how they understand the flow of the story. And then you kind of make changes from that. Like it's a great way to kind of do that. And yeah, and it just, I mean, it's like once you start using it, you understand it, but it's really just about how you set up the demographics, what kind of questions and assignments you want to set up in user testing. But I think that's a great way to understand storytelling.
Makes sense. Yeah, personal favorite there for sure. User testing involved in my function too. So there's this like you briefly mentioned about like product led growth, right? As well in your session, and I see this question from Modid, and he's mentioned like he comes from the same marketing and growth background, right? Which appears like typically might be pretty close to product marketing as a function. So the question is like, what changes particularly in the resume? And I like extend this question beyond as well. I think resume is just part of it. So while you answer that, what changes can this person make in the resume, and probably like other stuff that this person can do to get into product marketing roles?
Yeah. So I mean, like, I think the thing, like, so one interesting thing about product marketing is there's no specific, boundary of definition of like what product marketing is, right? Whatever you're doing in a marketing marketing role, right? There's some parts of it that is kind of specific to product marketing, right? So if you come from a marketing and growth background, right? Let's say, for example, if you've done some kind of content writing, right? You can reframe that as a way like, oh, I'm really great at storytelling. I can communicate the product really well, and basically kind of craft together that, because I think that's an important bit. If you come from a growth marketing background where you've tried out different channels, right? You can basically craft that as like, oh, I can help you generate demand, right? Which is another key aspect of product marketing, if you come from a background where, let's say you have experience in like a very specific area in within marketing, right? Like, I think then it becomes slightly more different. But I think in general, what I've seen is that if you have a more generalist background, it's a lot easier to enter product marketing. And then I think the last bit which you mentioned about product led, I think that the thing that needs to kind of be like mentioned here is that product led is just a term that came up recently, and the thing within marketing and growth is that terms come and go, right? So there's growth hacking, and then it became self-serve onboarding, and then it became product led, and then it's going to be some other term, right? What you need to do is that whatever the industry is chatting about, you need to have those kind of keywords in your resume, right? So if product led is the thing right now that everybody's talking about, do that. Say that, oh, I'm a product led growth marketer, right? And now you're relevant immediately, right? You can talk about a little bit about product led experiences and everything. So I just say that, like, I don't think should be too worried about these product led and everything. Like, if you're a marketer, if you have some experience, you can just tie it to like the certain aspects of product marketing.
Fair enough. So, yeah, keep things simple. Don't think too much. It's not rocket science. Is what I hear. So perfect. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think I see we still have like I think I'll just take last two questions here before we kind of wrap up for the night. Um, so I see this question from Usha in the Q&A tab here, and it says like, how is it bringing a product to market different from a core GTM role? Is it something that product marketing managers do every day? And if yes, how is it from a core GTM role at a particular startup?
So I think answer number one is product marketers are not doing that every day. It just depends on role to role. Every role has different requirements. Sometimes it's really just about communicating the story. Sometimes it's really about controlling children. Sometimes it's getting like everything. Sometimes it's a mishmash of everything. And I think the second thing is, again, product marketing is a very dotted line. So yes, for sure, I think a GTM role is kind of similar to, like, within product marketing, like there are, what you're essentially doing is GTM, messaging and positioning. You're kind of doing some form of all of these different things, right? So I mean, if you have that kind of experience, like, for sure, like, that is something you can do in the I don't think there's like, there is no way for me to say that, that, oh, like, these are completely different or these are the same. Like, these are all like merged into one another. Yes, you're doing some GTM work sometimes. Sometimes you're not doing that. Sometimes you're doing, something else, more messaging. Like, for example, a simple example is that my current role at Weflow, the first 6 months of my role, I've basically spent on pure messaging and positioning, getting our website live, understanding the pain points of our customers, because we didn't have a product in place. Like, it was still in beta, like we were still building it. And so it was about building out that wait list, right? But once the product kind of, came out live, once it was in beta, the focus shifted. The focus then moved to, how can we get more of those users in the funnel? How can we, start kind of bringing in more trustworthiness into the product, right? How can we figure out foundational channels that can be scaled to get more things? So it just keeps evolving. But yeah, I mean, I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Yeah, most certainly does. One little announcement before the final question there for you, Madhav. So we'll be like making a very small but interesting announcement in the next 3 minutes. So just hold on. Just sit there for a bit, and we'll be making that announcement towards the end of the session. Also, we'll be like dropping a link to the feedback form for the session. It would really be helpful for us, and would really appreciate if all of you like fill in in the form. It would just take like 30 seconds if not more. So just do that too, and it would be like really useful for us. Yeah. Madhav, actually, I was thinking like we could do like rapid fire or something, like three very rapid questions to you, and you have to like answer in the span of just 10 seconds. So are you ready for that?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, perfect. We love doing this, by the way. I hope I did not, catch you off guard there. But yeah. So was first question. So who's your ideal product marketer in this world?
That's a good one. Wow. I think the only one that I can kind of think about right now is Lucas Weber. He basically wrote the book on product marketing manager. That was the first book I read, and I kind of got my product marketing knowledge. Probably him. And then another person that I'd say is Derek, who basically currently leads the marketing team at ConvertKit. I think he's a solid product marketer. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Like, there's no one way to kind of answer that. But yeah,
Wow. If someone can like just put in those names in the chat so that it would be useful for everyone, that would be great. So yeah,
yeah,
Derek
yeah.
Lucas. Perfect. Awesome. Question two. What's your favorite book or a recommendation around product marketing for the audience tonight? If you have to choose one.
Now that's a interesting question. So I'd say read The Messy Middle, okay, which is by this guy called Scott Belsky, or I might be pronouncing his name wrong, but it's essentially about when you think about a company's growth, right? You're essentially, everybody thinks of like hockey stick growth, right? Everyone thinks about that, but like 99% of the companies never have that kind of a growth curve. Essentially, it's kind of like every company goes through like ups and downs and ups and downs, but then like in the bird's eye view, it's kind of growing steadily, right? And it's basically navigating through that messy middle, right? Navigating through that particular thing, because as a product marketer, you're going to see a lot of phases where the company's, let's say, not growing, the growth is flat. And I think in those times is when you need to really, because when times are happy, it's great, you keep doing whatever is working. But when things are not working, how do you kind of navigate that? And I think that's a wonderful book for you to kind of read.
Awesome. And final question. What would you be doing if you were not a product marketing manager today?
Oh, I'd be a musician. There's no doubt about that.
Very good. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Like I've always I've been that person in school where I was like I always thought that, oh, you know what, it'd be amazing to be standing in the middle of Wembley Stadium, with my guitar and a light shining on me, and I'm pulling off this insane solo. That's the dream, but not happening.
Wow. It's still not too late.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I think I definitely. I mean, I enjoy music, so yeah.
Wow, that's really really interesting. All right, we can wrap it up. Mala, since you have control of the screen, can you just move one slide forward because we just have a couple slides.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Just 1 second.
that would be really, really nice. So, a little announcement for everyone. We will be coming up with a few channels or specific to product marketing, and we'll be launching these channels tomorrow. Um, till now, you have, whenever you log into Slack, you get into a lot of knowledge and thoughts and people talking about the product management space, like core product and tech space. We just wanted to carve out some space for product marketing folks as well. So this will be like a safe space for you to like discuss things, exchange ideas, connect with others, and do a hell lot of stuff within the Slack workspace itself. Nothing changes. We're just adding new channels there. We'll be announcing this, like we'll be making an announcement pretty soon. Hopefully by tomorrow, if everything falls into place as the timeline stands. Tomorrow 5 p.m. is what we've scheduled this for. So yeah, I invite you all to like view the just log into the Slack workspace that we have. If someone from the TPF team could like just drop in a link to the Slack workspace just to make sure that everyone has an access to that. I think that would be great. Thanks so much. Yeah, so that was the announcement that I had to make. All sounds good. I hope, Madhav, you had fun talking to us, and I hope the audience had fun too. Keep the love flowing. Keep tagging us on Twitter, and yeah, this was lovely. I think we're done for the day. Happy Saturday again, to everyone, and have a great rest of the evening. Go out, have dinner, have fun, enjoy the weekend, and yeah, let's crunch again on a Monday.
Yeah,
Thanks for that. I'll play some music. There's lounge as well that will be opening up after this. So in the next 1 minute, we'll be diving into the lounge. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
One's a count, two's a crowd, three's a party coming, move around like first splash when the school is out, when the mood is up, when the sun is down. Enjoy the ride, there's some deals in the city. Hey, slide the dial, low in the movie. Take your time, let me know when you're ready. Couple months I've been messing with this baby. I'm hoping for plans tonight. Lady in the afternoon. Oh, girl, you love for me. Keep calling me. So I'm calling you. I love your company. Oh, girl, you love for me. It's about me. My biology. It won't be over till the fat lady sings. I owe you a trip, cause me and you, we got a thing. The sunshine state, air purely like a split. It's gonna be a ooh, smile, smile, you got the ring. Enjoy the ride, there's some deals in the shade. Hey, slide the dial, low in the navy. Take your time, let me know when you're ready. Couple months I've been messing with this baby. Hoping for plans tonight. Ain't get out the door. Oh, girl, you love for me. Keeps calling me, so I'm calling you. Leave me out the fight. I love your company. Oh, girl, you love for me. It's about me, my biology. Someone let me suck me now. Motos con el peso, ya se le caen. No me da pereza,